late 1970s. Gyms were louder back then. Iron rang against iron. Chalk floated in the air like smoke, and strength announced itself before it ever proved anything. This was a place where size spoke first and explanations came later. On that day, the center of gravity belonged to Hulk Hogan, a mountain of muscle in his early rise, broad shoulders stretching his shirt, confidence radiating off him like heat. He had just finished a set, veins full, breath heavy but controlled, and he said it with a grin meant to entertain and intimidate at the same time. 140 kilos of muscle. He said it as a statement of finality, as if mass itself had ended the discussion. People laughed. Some nodded. Some stepped back instinctively. Size does that. It rearranges space without asking permission. That was when the door opened. Bruce Lee didn't enter like a challenge. He entered like punctuation, small compared to the room's idols, compact, quiet, moving with a calm that didn't seek attention but gathered it anyway. He wore training clothes without logos, shoes thin enough to tell the floor the truth. A few people recognized him instantly. Others only felt the shift and didn't know why. Bruce watched first. He always did. Hogan noticed him after a moment, eyes flicking over, assessing automatically. Years of wrestling had taught him to read rooms, to feel where the spotlight belonged. He smiled, friendly, amused. Someone made an introduction. Bruce nodded politely. No bravado, no challenge, just presence. Hogan repeated himself, laughing now, patting his own chest, talking about weight, talking about strength, talking about how there was nothing on earth that could move a body like his without asking permission first. It wasn't cruelty, it was certainty. And certainty loves an audience. Bruce listened, then he asked a question. It wasn't loud, it wasn't sharp. It landed because it didn't try to. He asked what the weight was for. Was it for lifting? Was it for pushing? Was it for holding ground? Or was it for fighting? The room quieted slightly. Not awkwardly. Curiously. Hogan chuckled and said, "Muscle is muscle. That weight decides everything once hands get involved." He said physics doesn't care about philosophy. Bruce smiled at that genuinely. He said physics cares very much about leverage. That word leverage floated there, unfamiliar to some, obvious to others. Bruce stepped closer, not into Hogan's space, but into conversational distance. He said strength multiplied by bad angle equals effort wasted. He said small force applied at the right moment moves big things easily. Hogan raised an eyebrow. He wasn't offended, he was intrigued. Wrestlers respect confidence. They also respect tests. Someone joked they should see it. Bruce didn't suggest it. Hogan did. He said 10 seconds was all he needed to show what size meant. He said he wouldn't hurt Bruce, just hold him down, just demonstrate reality. Bruce nodded. He said 10 seconds was enough for clarity. They cleared a little space. No ring, no mats, just gym floor, unforgiving and honest. People circled without meaning to. This wasn't scheduled. That made it better. Bruce told Hogan to grab him any way he wanted. Hogan laughed and reached out confidently, hands like clamps, expecting resistance, expecting to feel muscle push back against muscle. He didn't. Bruce didn't resist. He repositioned. The grip closed on space that had already changed meaning. That was the first second. Hogan adjusted immediately, stepping in, using weight the way he always had forward, compressing, overwhelming. Bruce moved earlier, not faster, turning his hips just enough to redirect force into a line Hogan hadn't accounted for. Bruce's shoulders slipped under Hogan's center of gravity, not colliding with it, but borrowing it. Second 3. Hogan felt himself tilt. That sensation tilt is where certainty begins to panic, not falling yet, not losing, just not where you expect it to be. Hogan tried to correct, muscles firing, weight dropping. Bruce was already gone from where that correction mattered. He guided the movement instead of fighting it, stepping into the void Hogan's adjustment created. Second 6. Bruce's hand touched Hogan's wrist, not grabbing, just anchoring, his other arm wrapped at the elbow, close to the joint, not straining, not forcing. Hogan's strength surged reflexively, but it surged in the wrong direction, pouring into space Bruce had already emptied. Second 8. Bruce shifted his base, low and quiet, and turned. The sound that followed wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a slam. It was the sound of mass losing authority. Hogan went down not because he was thrown, but because there was nowhere left to stand that still belonged to him. 10 seconds. The gym froze. Hogan wasn't hurt. That mattered. He rolled instinctively, popped to a knee, eyes wide, not with anger, but surprise. Real surprise. The kind that rearranges understanding faster than pain ever could. Bruce stepped back immediately. He didn't hold the position. He didn't pin. He didn't demonstrate dominance. He released the moment clarity arrived. Hogan stood slowly, brushing chalk from his hands, laughing once. Not to save face, but because laughter is sometimes the only way to process a shattered assumption without breaking yourself. He asked Bruce what just happened. Bruce answered simply. He said weight is potential. Position decides whether it cashes out. He said muscles obey angles. He said the body follows the center whether it wants to or not. Hogan nodded slowly. Wrestlers understand center of gravity intimately, but often through repetition rather than articulation. Bruce had articulated it in 10 seconds. The room exhaled. What stunned everyone wasn't that Hulk Hogan had been taken down. Wrestling rooms see takedowns daily. What stunned them was how little force Bruce had used. There was no strain, no explosion, no contest of power, just timing, placement, and permission withdrawn. Hogan shook Bruce's hand, not theatrically, respectfully. He said something then that most people didn't hear clearly. He said size wins when rules agree with it. Bruce smiled and said rules always agree with leverage. That exchange mattered because it reframed strength without insulting it. Bruce didn't deny power. He contextualized it. Hogan didn't feel diminished. He felt informed. They talked afterward, not about fighting, about training, about why wrestlers train necks so obsessively, about why martial artists obsess over hips, about why balance is the only currency that never devalues. People hovered nearby, pretending not to listen, learning anyway. Bruce explained that taking someone down isn't about overpowering their will. It's about removing their options faster than they can create new ones. He said the moment you try to win with force alone, you've already chosen the slowest path. Hogan absorbed that quietly. Years later, he would say that encounter changed how he thought about movement. Not in the ring spectacle demands its own language, but in training. He began paying more attention to foot placement, to angles, to where weight was traveling instead of how heavy it felt. He said it made him safer, stronger, and harder to surprise. Bruce left the gym the way he always did, without ceremony, without claiming anything. He had no interest in collecting stories. He collected understanding. The myth would grow later, as myths do. People would say Bruce humiliated Hogan. People would say Hogan charged recklessly. People would add strikes that never happened. They needed drama where there was only clarity. The truth was quieter and therefore harder to sell. 10 seconds didn't prove Bruce was stronger. They proved strength is conditional, and that lesson, delivered without ego, is why the moment endured. What followed that 10-second takedown wasn't applause or argument. It was recalibration. The room didn't need to be convinced. It needed time to rearrange what it thought it knew. Hulk Hogan felt it first not in his muscles, which were already back under command, but in his feet. He noticed how the floor felt different once he paid attention to where his weight actually lived. He'd spent years commanding space by occupying it. Bruce had shown him, briefly and without strain, that space can be loaned and reclaimed faster than mass can argue. Hogan didn't retreat into defensiveness. That wasn't his way. Wrestlers live with reality daily. Balance breaks, grips fail, leverage decides. What changed was how clearly the lesson crystallized. He asked Bruce to explain it again, slower, not because he doubted what happened, but because he wanted to name it. Bruce Lee obliged, using the language he preferred, plain, anatomical, respectful. He spoke about centers of gravity as moving targets, about how the body is strongest when its parts agree on direction, and weakest when they don't. He said that strength is honest only when it's aligned. That alignment idea stuck. In the weeks that followed, Hogan began altering small things, not his lifts, not his size, the margins, foot placement during warm-ups, how he entered clinches, when he chose to lean and when he chose to step. He found that conserving momentum made him feel heavier without adding a pound. He discovered that controlling the line of force tired opponents faster than squeezing ever did. These weren't mystical revelations. They were mechanical truths made visible. Others noticed. Training partners remarked that Hogan felt harder to move, not because he resisted more, but because he was rarely where resistance mattered. When they tried to shove, he wasn't there. When they tried to pull, the line collapsed. That's when the lesson spread quietly through imitation rather than instruction. People copy what works. Bruce's philosophy has always traveled that way. He distrusted slogans. He trusted bodies. Bodies don't lie, he said. They reveal what you're practicing. When leverage replaced effort, the room practiced differently. Conversations shifted from how strong to where strong, from how much to when. The myth of size began to soften, not disappear, but soften. Size still mattered. It always would. But it stopped pretending to be final. Bruce had framed size as potential energy. Potential requires a trigger. Leverage is the trigger. Without it, mass becomes ballast. With it, even modest force multiplies. This reframing mattered beyond that gym. Wrestling culture, especially at the training level, has always respected physics. What it sometimes lacked was vocabulary that connected physics to restraint. Bruce offered that vocabulary without demeaning spectacle. He didn't tell wrestlers to stop being big. He told them to be earlier. That difference preserved identity while expanding capability. Hogan carried that forward into how he taught younger talent. Not in lectures, he wasn't that kind of teacher, but in cues. He'd adjust a trainee's stance, ask them to step instead of shove, tell them to wait half a beat. When asked why, he'd say balance decides first. The trainees felt it immediately. Feeling is persuasive. Bruce's restraint during the encounter became part of the lesson's longevity. He hadn't pinned Hogan. He hadn't celebrated. He'd released the moment understanding arrived. That release mattered. It framed the exchange as information, not hierarchy. People learn faster when their dignity remains intact. Years later, when the story surfaced in interviews, it arrived distorted by expectation. People wanted domination. They wanted heroes and vanquished giants. They wanted proof that size doesn't matter at all. Bruce would have corrected them gently. Size matters immensely when it's placed. The story wasn't about denying power. It was about directing it. That distinction kept the lesson alive. In combat sports broadly, leverage became a fashionable word. Too fashionable, some argued, stripped of nuance. Bruce's nuance was that leverage isn't a trick you apply. It's a relationship you maintain. Lose the relationship and the trick fails. That's why he emphasized footwork, timing, and release as much as grips and turns. A takedown, to him, was the final punctuation of a sentence written earlier. Hogan's training journals from that period, brief notes, not manifestos, reflect this shift. Fewer entries about load, more about angle. Fewer about squeezing, more about stepping. He found that injuries decreased when he stopped forcing positions his base didn't support. Longevity improved when he stopped arguing with gravity. Bruce's ideas echoed elsewhere too. Grapplers borrowed the language to explain what they'd always done intuitively. Strikers used it to refine entries. Even weightlifters adopted the idea that moving heavy things safely depends less on brute force than on stacked joints and cooperative lines. Leverage traveled because it explained success without insulting effort. The encounter's most durable gift was permission to be precise. Precision doesn't look impressive at first glance. It looks like restraint. It looks like waiting. In rooms addicted to noise, restraint reads as weakness. Bruce never cared. He believed the best movement convinces the body before the mind asks questions. Hogan felt that conviction and trusted it. When Hogan later spoke about the exchange, he avoided theatrics. He said Bruce didn't beat him. He said Bruce showed him something. That phrasing mattered. It kept the door open for others to walk through without fear of losing face. Bruce, for his part, never returned to claim credit. He believed influence should be anonymous to remain useful. If people practice a principle because it works, they'll keep it. If they practice it because it's associated with a name, they'll abandon it when fashion changes. Bruce wanted permanence. The 10 seconds became a lens through which other stories were retold. People revisited old matches and realized that the moments that decided outcomes were often quiet, misplaced feet, overcommitted steps, late adjustments. The highlight reels showed slams and strikes. The decisive moments lived earlier. That realization reframed training priorities. Warm-ups included balance checks. Drills emphasized entries and exits. Coaches talked about owning the center without occupying it. Language shapes attention. Attention shapes results. Bruce's broader philosophy: strip away what doesn't help, found another home. Wrestling rooms trimmed excess theatrics during practice, saving them for performance. That separation improved both. Training became honest, performance became safer. The story's endurance also owes something to humility. Bruce didn't need the myth to inflate him. Hogan didn't need it to diminish him. Their exchange modeled a rare professional courtesy: test, learn, release. No grudges, no scorekeeping. 10 seconds did what arguments never do. They replaced belief with experience. Experience is stubborn. It resists reinterpretation. People can debate words. Bodies remember outcomes. Hogan's body remembered how easily balance surrendered when leverage spoke. Bruce's body remembered that respect accelerates learning. The gym where it happened changed in subtle ways. Newcomers noticed a culture that valued placement over posturing. Veterans corrected stances before praising lifts. The floor, always the ultimate judge, became a teacher again rather than a backdrop. Bruce would have approved. He believed floors tell the truth because they don't negotiate. In the years that followed, as myths thickened and timelines blurred, the core lesson remained intact wherever it mattered. Size is potential. Leverage is permission. Timing is currency. Release is wisdom. That's why the moment still resonates, not as a tale of conquest, but as a demonstration of alignment. Bruce aligned force with angle. Hogan aligned confidence with curiosity. The room aligned belief with reality. 10 seconds didn't make one man bigger or smaller. They made understanding larger. And in disciplines built on repetition, enlarging understanding is the only way progress survives time.